Welcome to Inspect, a podcast about web design and development. In this week's show, we're going to be talking about our top 10 VS Code extensions. So we'll be picking our top 5 and we're going to compare, see what the list is like. So to kick us off, Kay, do you want to go first with your number 5 spot?
Yeah, so it was a bit difficult to pull in number 5 because there's just so many out there that I'm using. But I think going through what I've been using recently and what's most helpful for me, I think going with AutoClose Tag as my number 5. It's self-explanatory there. When you're writing, especially for me when I'm writing HTML for templates, especially for WordPress and things like that, just the ease at which tags and divs are closed when you're starting to write your code. It will know straight away when to close the tags for you, because you get into a lot of situations where you're probably writing a lot of code and you tend to miss a closing tag here and there. And I've been in that situation myself quite a few times actually.
Yeah.
Especially when I've been going through code I've written before and realizing later that there's a missing div or the closing HTML tag's not there for some reason. But yeah, the auto close tag's my number 5.
Yeah, it's handy, especially when you're handwriting code and you know that you're about to do several layers of nesting. Like if you're creating a div with an unordered list in there with list items with paragraph tags, you tend to write your opening div, your opening UL, your opening LI, and then your opening P tag, and then you got to remember to close them all in that order. So having it auto close, I mean, it's surprising that VS Code doesn't ship with this out of the box.
Yeah, it should be native, I think. I just yesterday I was working on some code somebody else had wrote, and it had nests upon nests upon nests, and you had article tags within divs, and within that you had unordered lists, and it was just mental. But using the auto close feature in VS Code just saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, I've got it installed as well. It didn't make my number 5 spot, but it's up there still. I installed mine quite a while ago, so I don't know if VS Code has actually introduced this natively now, but the plugin still exists and it's still getting stars and downloads. So I'm guessing that it's still not native.
I think it's still not native because it's still there. The one that I just found, there was another one I found that had just been removed because it's native now. So they are going through them, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Right, and the show notes will include links to all of these. Links to the VS Code marketplace for all the extensions that we mentioned. All right, so my number 5 spot is an extension called Colorize, which is spelled in the American way, Colorize. And basically what this does is it trawls through your code and it's mainly for CSS, obviously, and it finds any hex values, any HSL, any RGB values, and it basically gives them a background color which matches the color that they represent. So
nice.
The good thing about this is it also works with Sass. So it colorizes your Sass variables. It basically searches up the chain to where that variable is declared and picks out the color. And it also works with CSS custom properties as well. So you can have some weird names for your custom properties and they may not necessarily be very obvious. And Colorize just shows you a quick a background swatch of what that color is.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I have to look at that one, definitely.
Yeah, I'll find it really handy in my Sass variables file because I like to organize my my color palette in sort of hue color, and they're not necessarily going to be 10% gray, 20% gray, but generally you have 5 or 6 shades of gray, and one will be lighter and then one will be darker, but they may not necessarily be called gray light, gray dark, for example.
Yeah.
So it's nice to just have that sort of visual cue of which one is the darker one, or which shade of red is slightly darker than the other.
I think that's really handy, especially when a design's been passed on to you and you're just literally just working through code. And it's always good to have a visual cue of the colors, the brand colors that you're working with within your code. So if it's there, I mean that's just so handy. That's brilliant. I'm gonna have to look into that one.
Yeah.
Because I can see that one helping me out.
And it just means you don't have to keep referring back to your variables file as well. You can just, because as you're writing your CSS, the plugin is intelligent enough to search up the tree and find where that variable was first declared, and it picks out the color. So it's very good.
Okay, so my number 4, Git Lens. And again, it just has made it into the top 5 recently. I heard it mentioned on Twitter. There's a developer that I was following, and then I just kind of picked it up and started using it in a project recently. But it's just essentially using it's just like Git on steroids really within VS Code. And the reason why I'm using it within VS Code is just to allow me to navigate and explore repos. And the code comparison side of it is just really, really helpful. Just having everything natively there rather than going, because I usually use source tree to, when I'm working with repositories and stuff and pushing anything to a repository. But I wasn't using Git that much before. I think I've mentioned that in previous episodes. But recently, I'm working with a couple of other guys on some projects, and it's just really, really handy to have it within VS Code rather than having another application through which you got to find these kind of things. But for me, it's brilliant, and I've started to use it a lot more now. So yeah, definitely number 4. I can see this moving up to number 2 at some point. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right about GitLens. I use that as well. I did have it in my list at number 3 spot, I think it was, but I've since removed it because you've added it, so we don't really need too much repetition. But yeah, I use GitLens as well. I don't use it heavily because, like you said as well, I mainly do all of my Git workflow using source tree. The only time I actually turn on, because you can toggle GitLens just using the command palette, so I have it turned off by default most of the time. And then I literally just turn it on every now and then just to get a quick idea of who did a certain line of code in a file, for example. And normally if I find something which doesn't agree with the way I would have done it, and then at least I can find out, because I do work for an agency and we have several people, working on files at the same time. It's quite handy in my case to just turn it on now and then. But I do really like the diffing features where you can see the before and after of files. I find that a lot cleaner to do that in VS Code than it is to do that in any external file diffing tool or doing it in source tree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I like it. And also I like that when you have got it toggled on, it sometimes it can overpower your file a little bit. But it's nice to just have that little muted text next to each line showing, the date it was last committed and what the branch name was and so on.
Yeah.
But like I said, it does clutter your file a little bit, so I do tend to turn it off most of the time.
Yeah, I'm the same. Literally just like it's on and off. When I need to look at it, it's on. Yeah.
Okay, my number 4 spot, I also did have AutoClose Tag in there, but another one that I use in sort of conjunction with AutoClose Tag is Auto Rename Tag. Which again is fairly self-explanatory. What it does is if you've got a div on your page and you decide it with some text in it and you realize actually I need to make this semantic, I need to turn it into a paragraph, you can just rename the opening tag and it automatically renames the closing tag. So yeah, I use this a lot with React especially, where you've got, because it works with it's not just native sort of HTML tags, there's any custom tags as well, so it works with React component tags. And it's good when you're maybe copying and pasting some example code from somewhere else and then you want to change the markup slightly but not necessarily the structure. And yeah, the example of that is like if you want to change an unordered list to an ordered list, you can just quickly rename the first one and it automatically renames the closing tag as well. So yeah, really good. Works well with AutoClose Tag.
Nice. Might have to get one on board as well.
Right, go on then. Number 3.
Cool. Number 3. So for number 3, I've got Prettier. I don't like the name, but yeah, again, it is self-explanatory when it comes down to formatting your code. And me being me and the type of person I am, I spend a lot of time wondering how on earth I'm going to format the code in, let's just say a HTML file or a CSS file. Do I write my CSS all on one line, or do I do it the long way and use tabbing and things like that for a new declaration and things like and that kind of style. Using this plugin really or extension, it really helped me because I don't have to think about that anymore. So it's literally start typing it out however I want to type it out, and I can use presets or whatever the default settings within the extension, and it just formats it for me, and I'm generally happy with the formatting anyway. So yeah, it just saves me a lot of time and hassle, and your code just looks really, really nice and neat afterwards.
Yeah. Do you have any overrides that you've put in?
No, I haven't. Not yet. Not yet. No, but that is definitely something I need to be looking into, because it's such a handy feature.
Yeah. Yeah, I've pretty much used it default out of the box as well. I think the only thing that I've changed on my prettier settings is the tab width. I've changed it to 2 spaces instead of 4.
Yeah.
And I think there's the trailing commas option. I've got it turned off, I believe it is. Yeah, it should be off anyway.
Yeah.
So that, trailing commas aren't allowed. I should keep that on actually, because it's actually handy to have trailing commas on. But yeah, otherwise I keep it pretty much out of the box. It seems to have good opinions on ways to format code. But the beauty of the plugin is that although it is opinionated, everything's an option, so you can just turn it off. And then the great thing is you can obviously then create this prettier config file as well and add that to your repository so that the whole team can be working off the same formatting options as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you have yours set to format every time you save the file, or just do you do manual formatting?
It's manual at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I do mine manual as well. I found that doing auto formatting is sometimes it makes it hard to read your code while you're typing it.
Yeah, I find that a bit annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you do want to have non-conventional formatting while you're actually just laying out your content.
Yeah.
I don't mind if like text lines are longer than the suggested wrapping point, for example.
Yeah, and the thing is, it keeps your coding natural as well. That's what I find about it. It's the normal way that you to code without this extension. It helps to keep that balance, I think.
Yeah, I've worked on some projects where the code formatting was very strict, where you couldn't even push a commit to your Git repository without fixing all your sort of formatting errors.
Wow.
And it just, although it created a really nice repository in the end and very clean code, it just made the whole sort of development cycle really slow. So every time you would go to push your commit, you'd just ended up with these like stupid errors. And errors about white space and stuff like that. I know some people are probably very particular about that sort of thing, and there might be people shouting at their not at their screen but at their podcast player now, thinking, no, what you're doing, you need to have this enforced. But I suppose it depends on the size of your project and the number of people working on your project. But for small teams, it doesn't need to be that strict, I don't think.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I've got Prettier on there as well, further down my list, so that's going to be coming up soon. My number 3 spot, I've just switched it out actually because we had some repetition, but I've just added in a plugin called Better Comments.
Okay.
So what this does is it's got a few shortcuts for creating quick like comment blocks and things like that. So you can have like multi-line comments and single-line comments and comments in certain formats for different types of files. So, but the beauty of it is that you can add like modifiers into your comments. So you start your comment off and then add an asterisk, and then what Better Comments does is it highlights your comment in green. If you put an exclamation mark at the beginning, highlights it in red. If you put a question mark, it highlights it in blue, for example. And then if you start your comment with the word to do in uppercase, then it gives you a nice bright orange comment.
No, that's really handy.
Yeah, so although they stay comments in your code, it doesn't affect the way your code runs. Within your Visual Studio editor, you can sort of they just stand out a little bit more. And another thing is when you comment out an existing comment, right? So like in JavaScript, you have the double slash to write a comment, a single line comment. If you then put another double slash in front of that, so you end up with 4 forward slashes, it actually strikes out your comment as well. So it's like you can comment out your comments. It's a bit of a strange concept, but it's quite handy as well to have that. And then because you've got all these different types of comments, then you can search by those as well.
Right.
So you can just sort of search your whole project for the word to do and bring up a list of all the outstanding to do items within your code. which are obviously within your comments. So yeah, better comments. It's a good one.
Very handy, that one. I think the formatting side, when I'm looking in other people's code, other files and things like that, the first thing I do check out are the comments. And usually when they grayed out, it's really difficult to kind of go through it. But I think with the color coding thing, I've just opened it up in a browser actually, just having a look at it. It does look really, really handy.
It depends on your theme, your editor theme, and the language that you're writing in, because some languages do color their code quite a lot anyway.
Yeah.
But for something like, say, I don't know, CSS, where CSS doesn't generally have that many colors in the code, it only has like 3 or 4. When you've got these sort of bright orange comments and bright blue comments dotted in between them, you can really make them stand out.
That's handy. Very handy. I'm just having a look at the languages that it's supporting. It's
a massive list.
Supports everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it supports everything. I mean, there's probably some real weird like offshoot of some sort of language that's not supported, but all the big ones are there, all the standard ones.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a good one. All right, number 2.
Moving on to number 2. So this one's probably, I don't think a lot of people would agree with this one. I think it depends on what frameworks you're working with, but in HTML, my number 2 is Bootstrap for snippets. I work with Bootstrap quite a lot with websites, generally just creating page templates and any sort of custom sort of templates that I need. I'm using Bootstrap for a lot of the time, and before I was having to refer to the Bootstrap for sort of like their codex and just go through their pages and find the class names or the little features that I required to get something working. So like an accordion or like a slider and things like that. So even buttons and stuff. So this extension just chucks the snippet feature in there, and it will auto detect what you're trying to type and what you're trying to look for from the Bootstrap code, and it just saves a hell of a lot of time and hassle. And I swear by, if you're a Bootstrap developer out there, or if you use Bootstrap on your websites, I highly recommend you use Bootstrap for snippets in VS Code. It's just a life-saving extension.
Are you fully over to Bootstrap 4 now? Do you not use Bootstrap 3 on any of your projects?
No, everything's I've migrated everything over. So anything that was on Bootstrap 3, I've actually gone in. There were small sites anyway. They've just been sort of like overhauled, and we've got Bootstrap 4 on everything now. And the WordPress theme that I use, it's like a vanilla theme, and it's called Bootstrap Starter, and it's a Bootstrap 4 theme anyway. So that's being used on all the websites that I'm rolling out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just on a side note, what's the upgrade process like from Bootstrap 3 to 4?
I don't know what the right process is, but I just literally, it was a case of, there was about 4 or 5 of these websites. They're very small sites. And luckily for me, they were using a theme in WordPress, which was using Bootstrap 3. And for me, it was just a case of just installing the new Bootstrap 4 theme, creating a child of it locally first, and just trying to see if that kind of worked seamlessly. There were a few issues, but it was just a case of just a few minor fixes here and there, and it probably didn't take much longer than an hour, to be honest. But I don't know, for anyone who's gone and hard coded Bootstrap 3 in websites, there's probably some documentation on it on the Bootstrap website. But yeah, for me, it was just a case of just installing a new theme.
All right. Well, my number 2 is on the same vein as yours. It's also about snippets. So it's actually called JSX Snippets. So JS and JSX Snippets, and basically I use this pretty much every day. It's got a lot of pre-built snippets for React, so that's where I use it the most. So let's say you're creating a new class component, instead of writing, import React from React and so forth, I can just basically type in RCC, so React class component, RCC, and then hit the tab, and that gives you the whole sort of React class component structure, and it automatically puts the cursor into the component name so that you can just give it, edit the name straight away.
Yeah.
And then you hit tab again, and it moves the cursor into the actual component body as well. So it's just very clean. I use it for the class components, for the stateless components, to create the constructor in a class component. So basically anything React based. It automatically updates your class when you're using the class keyword. It updates that to class name, and then just little things like that. And then some of the JavaScript ones as well. So if you're doing like a document.getReady document, actually I can't even remember what it says because I hardly ever type it now. I think you just type in doc and it comes up as one of the. Or no, you type in ready. I think the snippet for that is.
Yeah.
Just type in ready in a Java function, or you can type in like IIEF. I can't remember the other immediately invoked function. IIFE. Yeah, iffy.
Yeah.
So you type up like IIF, and it gives you the snippet for that. So it opens up a function expression with and then you hit tab and it puts the cursor in the right place. So yeah, just really good, really well thought out snippets. They've all got the placeholders all set up, and the tabs all work nicely. There's a couple of places like this, in particular the sort of stateless function, stateless component, React stateless component. When you hit tab, it doesn't tab into your sort of component arguments, so where you need to import your props, it doesn't tab into there, so you'd have to go manually move your mouse into there anyway. But I reckon I could probably hack it and add that in if I wanted to. But yeah, just massively speeds up React development.
That is pretty cool, and the fact that it works, you've got the JavaScript there as well. I think that's very handy, and this might end up rehauling my whole top 5 now, because this is probably something I need to look into, especially with the JavaScript.
Yeah, so it works with JavaScript, TypeScript, and React, and TypeScript React as well. But it's just got loads of little ones, like for example, you can let me find some examples. There's loads of React ones. There's loads regarding like prop types for React. So you could just type in like PTA, and that equates to prop types.array, for example, if you got an array prop type. And then just general sort of basic ones like CM will give you a comment block within a JavaScript. So like a proper JavaScript comment block with parameters and all sorts, and an author. It gives you one of those. Just typing in IMP gives you an import statement. So it lets you like import, and then you put in your path, and then you tab to your actual the file that you're importing. So there's loads. Yeah, there's some really good ones. Okay, here we are, the number 1 spot.
So my number 1 is Intellisense for CSS class names. Bit of a mouthful there, but you'll find a lot of Intellisense extensions on the marketplace for VS Code. I just find this one just so helpful and so powerful. And I'm using it all the time because I'm writing CSS for every single project I'm working on. So, it's just so handy to have, auto completion for your CSS class definitions in your workspace within VS Code. So if I was to just drag and drop a folder into VS Code, it will automatically, pull all my definitions from any folders that contain CSS files, and it will just help me to write my code much cleaner, much faster. And you've got the override feature as well. So there's certain folders which contain CSS which you don't want it to actually go into and find any kind of definitions and things. Then you can always tell it to not look in those folders. So it's just brilliant, and it's going to be hard to top this one. But I think you've mentioned a couple in yours where I think they could come close. But for me, this is it's a no-brainer.
Okay, well, this doesn't necessarily have to be in like a favorite to least favorite sort of order. These are just our top 5 used ones. So we can put a disclaimer on there that in no particular order.
Yeah.
So it's basically trawls through any classes that you've added to your HTML and auto suggests those. Is that what it does?
Yeah, that's it. So what it will do, it'll look in your CSS folder and any CSS files that you've got. And so when you're writing your HTML and you're pulling a class, yeah, it'll basically just it'll pull out all the ones you've mentioned, and then you just hit enter on the one that you want, and it just starts to it's just very easy to write your code.
Okay.
When you're creating divs and things like that. Yeah.
Do you know if it works in reverse? So suppose you've got some HTML with some classes defined on it.
Yeah.
And then you go and write your CSS afterwards. Does it is there any way of like bringing up what those classes are?
That'd be an interesting one. I'll check that one out. That's very interesting. I think it might. I'll have a look at that. Yeah. I'll check that one out.
Because that could work then if you've inherited some markup and you had to go and write the CSS for it. Instead of you trawling through the whole markup to see what classes are used, you could potentially just, start bringing those up with IntelliSense.
Yeah, it's got manual recaching in there as well. So if anything has changed in your definitions, you can, manually recache it, and then it will just, auto-populate anything that's been updated and amended.
Okay. And is there any sort of loading time of your project that's affected by this?
Not really. I haven't noticed anything.
I suppose it depends on the size of your CSS files, but...
Yeah, if you've got huge files, then maybe, yeah.
All right, well, for my number one spot, I actually had Prettier, but because we've already spoken about it, I haven't really got anything else to add other than go and check it out, because it's brilliant, and it deserves to be at number one. It just, it takes a bit of configuration, and it might feel a bit alien at first, because, you might not necessarily agree with all of its like formatting options, and there's a few that I don't agree with, but it's easy to get around them. Like I said, you can customize all of the properties in there as well. But what I've done is I've just gone and added a sort of bonus number one spot as well for another one that I use all the time, every day. It's not essentially that important, but it just makes it very very easy in an agency environment, especially. So the extension is called Project Manager. And basically what it does is if you're using VS Code for all of your different projects, you can just basically save I think it saves as a JSON file in your like dev directory. Yeah, it just saves a JSON file with the paths to all of your different projects that you've got. And then when you want to, if you're working on a project and you quickly want to switch to the context of another one, you just hold a Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P, and you just type in, actually no, it's Command-Alt and P. And it brings up a list of all your projects, and then you can just quickly just scroll through or start typing the name. So like in my list, I've got sort of 15 or so different projects for the different clients that I work on. Some of those are personal projects, some of those are actual work related ones, some of them are just like hacking when I'm just testing things out. And anytime I start a new project in VS Code, I'll always go and save that project path to my project manager first, and then we've always got quick access to it. So that's my sort of bonus number one spot. And then that's it, that's the top 10. But obviously we picked out a couple of bonus ones as well, so on top of Project Manager. So do you want to go for your bonus one first?
Yeah, so my bonus one that I've got is Quokka. It's Quokka. And again, I found this recently when I found out that we were going to be talking about VS Code extensions. This just sort of like popped up, and it's very handy and allows you to test your JavaScript within VS Code. I am new to it, but just from the recent usage on it, it's I can see it being very handy, and I can see myself using this a lot more than loading up dev tools and typing in JavaScript in the console and things like that. So I've just been reading up on the actual extension, and there's a lot in there. There's a lot. So that's my bonus one, Quokka.
All right, cool. I've looked at Quokka before. I think they've got a web interface as well, which I've looked at, but it's not something that I've used in any sort of production site anywhere. Right, my bonus one is it's not really of any use, to be honest, but if you've ever been on Twitter or something like that and you've seen these nice screenshots of people sharing their code, chances are it's created with this extension called Polar Code, which is like Polaroid for code. And what it does is you install install the extension, and then when you run it, it basically opens up another tab in Visual Studio, VS Code, and it gives you a little text editor in that tab, and you paste in your code, and then there's a little camera icon at the bottom, and then it basically just generates a nice looking screenshot of your code.
Wow, how cool is that? I'm just watching the demo
Yeah,
now.
it gives you what looks like a browser window. It strips away all the extra Chrome that you don't need. It strips away line numbers, but what it does do is it does match your editor theme as well. So if you've got a light theme, you're going to get a light themed screenshot. And the screenshots it gives you are PNGs on transparent backgrounds, and they have like a bit of a drop shadow behind them as well. So if you're then going to drop that into like a presentation or something, it does stand out from the page. It looks quite nice. And yeah, if you've ever seen like, you know, nice screenshots of code on Twitter, chances are they've come from this plugin. So yeah, I don't use it very often, but it's nice. It's just a nice way to share your code if you do, rather than, you know.
So that's pretty cool, because I've seen some people on Instagram who follow my page on there, and these guys have got nothing but code screenshots on there, and I'm like, how on earth have you got it so crisp? And you know, I was like, damn.
Yeah, because the alternative would be, you know, to increase your font size maybe, and then take a screenshot, open that in Photoshop, you know, delete out the line numbers, and then, you know, crop that window and put it into a different sort of frame, you know, a sort of minimal frame. So it's a lot of hard work, isn't it?
Exactly.
And then yeah, this just makes it really nice and simple. So yeah, that's your bonus one. So make sure you install that.
I'm impressed. Nice.
All right, cool. So that's the extensions portion. I figured we could just talk about your actual theme as well. Have you got any customizations on your actual workspace, and what font you're using, what theme you're using, or anything else?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the font, I think we're both using the same fonts, aren't we? The Fira Code is like the cleanest one out there. I think everyone's using that, to be honest.
Yeah, I've actually only switched to it recently, Fira Code. I used to use Operator Mono, which is nice. It gives you like, it's got some nice italics in Operator Mono. It's got like a cursive italics. And just generally it's quite a clean font, but you know, a lot of people at work as well, they was talking about Fira Code and the way it's got the ligatures, and you know, you get your nice looking fat arrows and your nice looking, you know, double equals and triple equals and stuff like that. So it looks cool. So yeah.
I never thought I'd see the day where developers would be having issues about the font that's being used for their code.
Well, if you're going to be staring at this font and, you know, for the best part of 6-7 hours a day, you want something that looks nice. And yeah, it definitely...
That's true. I mean, you can imagine typing code in Comic Sans.
Oh yeah, why not? Still works. Yeah, I take it you've got a dark theme as well, like most people.
Yeah, so I find myself switching between Dracula and Atom 1 dark theme.
Right.
They're both really cool. One in the Atom 1 dark theme, I tend to use a dark sort of like brown background. I do like that, and it's just weird because sometimes I tend to switch, and then I just want to go to the Dracula theme, which has like it's not really black background, but it is dark. So I find myself switching between the two, and it just helps my eyes as well, and helps me to focus on the code. That's me. That's just the way I work on it. Yeah, switching between those two.
Yeah, sure. I'm using the Material darker. So Material theme comes with a few different flavors. It's got like darker, lighter. So I'm using the darker version, but I've added a couple of customizations to it because I have the terminal open within VS Code as well. By default, the Material theme, the terminal is the same background color as the rest of the actual sort of coding environment. So I've just gone and tweaked some of the preferences to make that little bit darker.
Right.
So I made that darker. I made like some of the borders between the panels. I've changed the colors of some of those. But other than that, yeah, pretty much just straight out of the box using Material Darker. It's quite a nice one.
Yeah, I think these ones they're pretty good out of the box. I don't think they need too much customization. I mean, for me, the background does require a change, I think. But yeah, that's just me. That's my preference. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use any light themes ever?
No, I think the last time I used a light theme was when I was coding in Dreamweaver, and that was white.
What I found is that if you're ever presenting at a conference or a meeting or something like that and you're using a projector,
Yeah.
I've found sometimes that a dark theme doesn't show up very well unless you've got a very bright projector. So sometimes if I am presenting anything, then I might switch to a light theme then, and then I just literally use a Material light theme as well.
Right.
Which is kind of almost an invert of what my current theme is. It just makes it easier to show up on a projector. But then as soon as I'm done, I switch back.
Cool.
All right, brilliant. Well, that's the whole list. So yeah, all the links for all of these extensions that we mentioned, the fonts, the themes, and all the bonus things will all be in the show notes. Show notes you can find at inspect.fm, and they should show up in your podcast player as well with links. If you like the show, you can leave us a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts or within your own podcast player if possible. And the best thing to do if you want to support us is just share it with your friends. Let people know about the show and let people know what you think.
Yeah.
So, any final words?
Not really, man. Just top up on your antihistamine, guys, because I've just been hit really bad with this hay fever. But yeah, that's my word for the week.
All right, mate. Okay, I'll catch you soon.
Nice one.
Bye.